how is it that the side that has where tens of thousands are being killed and which goes into effectively a genocide, is receiving less coverage per fatality, far less coverage per fatality than the side that's committing these atrocities. That just seemed incredibly blatant to it. I mean, you could see it on a sort of anecdotal basis, but the AI modeling that we used in order to produce these findings showed this huge discrepancy. And then if you go beyond that, we looked at, for example, humanizing stories. So the BBC, despite this huge discrepancy in deaths, despite this 34 times more Palestinian deaths, the BBC ran nearly the same number of victim profiles of Palestinians, 279, and compared to the Israelis, where there's 201 victim profiles for the Israelis. And so again, we see this almost equal sort of thing where taking place, despite the fact that far more Palestinians have been killed and are still being killed. And then we looked at, for example, the type of language that was being used when it was describing some of these deaths or killings. And this was actually a point that was made by internal BBC journalists before this report came out, that one of the things they noticed, and researchers and others who news consumers had noticed, is that whenever the death of an Israeli was described, you found words that were very sort of emotive, like slaughter. The Israelis have been slaughtered, or there's a massacre of the Israelis, or the barbaric attacks on the Israelis. That kind of very strong language. And we found with the language analysis we did was that those kind of words, that kind of emotive language was used 4 times more often for Israelis than it was for Palestinians. So again, this anecdotal stuff that the BBC journalists internally had criticized the editorial teams for, the AI modeling and our language analysis showed that this was true. That these words were being used more to describe the killing and deaths of Israelis. And then the question arises as to why. Why is it like this? And when it's done on such a scale, because you've got to remember October the 7th and post-October the 7th for many, many months, including the entire year we looked at, this was the main news story across the BBC and across most news channels. So you can imagine the level of coverage that was being given to this. And all that being pumped into people's living rooms and on their phones and etc., wherever they consume news from.